Edith Cushing has always had the ability to see ghosts. She discovered this when she was just 10 years old. Her mother had passed on from red cholera, and Edith remembers how devastating the burial was. That night, Edith lies in her bed weeping at the loss of her mother when she hears a strange sound. Edith turns to look at the hallway leading to her room. She sees a figure emerge from the shadows, so she turns and faces the wall. Suddenly, the ghost grabs her arms. Edith's mother's ghost warns Edith to beware of Crimson Creek when the time comes. Edith can only scream in terror. 10 years later, Edith is trying to realize her author's dream. She walks into a large building where she meets up with her childhood friend Dr. Alan McMichael. The two are exchanging pleasantries when Alan's mother and her friends join them. They are talking about a charming bachelor who has moved to town for business with his sister. Alan's mother mocks Edith for aiming to be like Jane Austen, who died a spinster. Edith gives her a sassy comeback that leaves the women bewildered. She meets up with a publisher, hoping that he will publish her manuscript. That evening when having dinner with her father, Edith claims that the publisher wanted her to write a love story, not a ghost story. Edith feels that her story was rejected because she is a woman. Cushing gives his daughter a pen to mark her new beginning as an author. Edith convinces her father to let her type the story in his office. She is typing when the charming Englishman walks in, saying that he has a meeting with Cushing. The man introduces himself as Baronet Thomas Sharp. He praises Edith's manuscript, but the two are interrupted by Cushing. Thomas wants Cushing and his rich friends to invest in his clay mining invention so that he can revive his family's clay mines. Cushing rejects Thomas's proposal since he has not tested the machine. Thomas tries convincing the older man, but Cushing has made up his mind. That evening, Cushing prepares to attend a ball. Edith wonders why Cushing was so harsh on Thomas, and Cushing says that he has a bad feeling about the Englishman. Later that night, Edith is in her room when her doorknob rattles quickly before opening. Edith goes to investigate and sees a ghost in the far corner. The ghost moves toward her, but she closes the door. She asks the ghost what it wants. The ghost passes through the door and reminds Edith to beware of Crimson Peak. Suddenly, Edith's maid enters the room, informing her that Thomas is at the door. Thomas wants Edith to accompany her to the ball, and she agrees. The ball is at McMichael's house, where a beautiful Englishwoman is playing the piano. After finishing, the guests are drawn to the new arrivals. Everyone wonders why Thomas is with Edith despite showing interest in another woman called Eunice. Edith introduces Thomas to Alan, and Thomas introduces his sister Lucille. As expected, Thomas asks Edith to help him demonstrate the waltz. Edith is hesitant as Thomas should ask Eunice, but after some convincing, she agrees. The two dance perfectly to the amazing tunes Lucille plays. By the end of the night, Edith and Thomas are attracted to one another. Meanwhile, Cushing hires a private investigator to look into his family since he cannot shake the feeling that something is amiss. On a walk outside, Edith goes to meet up with Thomas and Lucille. The two huddle under a tree, where Lucille surrenders her large ring to Thomas. That evening at a dinner party in Cushing's home, the investigator gives Cushing his findings. Cushing learns that the siblings are hiding a lot of unsavory facts. He bribes them to leave the town and for Thomas to severely break Edith's heart. Thomas meets Edith and manages to do what is expected of him. He disparages her feelings and her novel, making Edith slap him and walk away. Unfortunately, someone breaks into the house that night and brutally murders Cushing. In the morning, Edith gets up to a letter from Thomas. He explains that Cushing had paid him to break up with her, prompting Edith to run into Thomas's hotel. She finds the room being cleaned and assumes that Thomas has already left. Fortunately, Thomas is in the reception, and the two reconcile. Edith is approached by her father's lawyers and learns of the horrific thing that happened that night. She has to identify the body in the morgue. Soon, burial preparations begin, and Edith is accompanied by Thomas all through. On her finger is the ring Thomas had taken from Lucille. Soon, Thomas and Edith travel to Allerdale Hall, his family home. The two are married now. Edith is fond of a small dog that comes running toward her and insists that they keep it. Edith learns that the house is sinking into the red clay mine below, and some of the clay is seeping into the house. Later, Edith sees a woman lurking around, but when she turns back, no one is around. She follows the ghost's movements into the elevator, but the elevator ascends. Edith and Thomas reunite with Lucille, who had traveled home earlier. Thomas shows Edith their room so she can take a bath. Even the pipes are clogged with the clay, so she has to wait for a few minutes for the red water to clear. While having the bath, she plays with the small dog. She is getting dressed when a ghost covered in clay stands behind her. Edith turns around, but the ghost has disappeared. She heads downstairs for some tea prepared by Lucille. Edith wonders at its bitter taste, making Thomas mention that the tea is prepared with firethorn berries. Edith wakes up to the sweet music that Lucille plays on the piano. Lucille mentions that Edith's ring was once their mother's. Meanwhile, Alan finds a cutout check on Cushing's checkbook. This heightens his curiosity, so he starts re-examining Cushing's murder. Edith continues to investigate the house, finding a wheelchair by a window. She keeps on seeing ghosts, but she assumes it is because Thomas and Lucille's mother had died there. Edith finds Thomas in the study, and their interaction ends up in a makeout session. Lucille brings some tea for Edith. Thomas declines the tea, but Lucille watches as Edith drinks up. At night, Edith is woken up by a sharp pain in her stomach. She finds that Thomas is not in bed with her. Edith gets a candle and begins investigating the house further. She enters a room and finds a box with wax cylinders. In the hallway behind her, the red ghost appears and starts crawling toward her while trying to say something. Edith grabs the dog, and the two enter the elevator, which takes them to the basement. There are large clay pits protected by metal lids. Edith also finds a locked trunk with the initials S on it. Edith seeks out Thomas and asks if someone had died violently in the house, but Thomas says the house is old, so something must have happened. Meanwhile, Thomas is working on his new invention outside when it stops. Thomas tries to fix it, but he ends up burning his hand. As Edith dresses it, Thomas mentions that the house is called Crimson Peak, making a chill run down Edith's spine. Alan's investigations make him learn about the private investigator that Cushing had hired before his death. Meanwhile, Edith continues getting weaker by the day and vomiting blood. Each time, she wakes up and investigates the mansion. She has come to terms with the ghost inside, and she desperately wants to know what the ghost wants. The ghost leads Edith into a bathroom. She finds a red ghost with an axe jutting from its head. The ghost follows her, saying that she should leave. Edith calls out for Thomas, who comes in with Lucille. The two comfort her, saying that this is her home and she should embrace it. Thomas decides to take Edith out of the house for a while so that she can clear her head. Lucille informs Thomas that he should get Edith to sign the final inheritance papers so that they can get this over and done. At the post office, Edith gets a letter from Italy, but the name on the envelope is Enola Society. The snowstorm causes Edith and Thomas to spend the night in a motel. The couple shares a few fond memories before making love eventually. When they travel back home, Lucille is furious that the two made love. Edith takes advantage of her anger to steal a key with the name Enola inscribed on it. Edith has a document showing the complete transfer of her father's property to Thomas's mines. She fails to sign the documents, opting to read the letter from Italy first. Edith goes to the basement and unlocks the trunk. She finds a bunch of secret documents and a gramophone. Edith realizes that the documents are from places that the siblings have traveled. A thudding noise makes her open one of the holes. She turns the clay but finds nothing. After she leaves, the human skeleton surfaces. Lucille notes that the key is missing, but Edith returns it discreetly. Soon, Edith learns from the documents and the wax cylinders that Thomas had married 3 wealthy women, and one of them had a child. She learns that Lucille has been poisoning her with the tea. She tries to leave the mansion, but the snowstorm is worse. Edith's health gets worse, and she now has to use a wheelchair. She refuses the tea, but Lucille spikes the porridge too. One night, the ghost with the kid leads Edith into a room where she finds Thomas and Lucille making love. Edith tries to get away, but in her weak state, Lucille grabs her and hits her, making her fall to the floor. Luckily, Alan arrives and helps Edith. When Lucille and Thomas leave, Alan tells Edith that he knows the truth and wants to take her home. The siblings come back, so Alan exposes that Lucille killed their mother when she was 14. She is also the mastermind behind the deaths of Thomas's wives, who she poisoned and buried in the clay after they signed over their properties. Lucille stabs Alan and tasks Thomas with finishing the task. Thomas approaches Alan and asks him to help him stab in a place that will not do any damage. Thomas takes Alan to the basement and promises to get Edith back. Meanwhile, Lucille coerces Edith to sign the last documents. Lucille confesses that Enola had given birth to a baby, but he was born wrong, so she had to kill it. She confesses to killing Cushing and that she killed their mother after she had discovered that Lucille was romantically involved with Thomas. This makes Edith mad, and she stabs Lucille with a pen and flees. Fortunately, Thomas arrives in time to burn the property papers. Thomas has truly fallen in love with Edith. Lucille feels betrayed by this act, so she stabs Thomas 3 times, killing him. She gets enraged and starts chasing after Edith. Lucille and Edith end up outside. Lucille wants to kill Edith with the same cleaver she had killed her mother with. Edith calls out for help, and Thomas's ghost appears. She takes advantage of this and hits Lucille with a shovel, ending her life. Edith says her goodbyes to Thomas's ghost as it vanishes. She rushes to get Alan, and the two are rescued by the villagers. Meanwhile, Lucille's ghost is stuck in the mansion playing piano. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.